Hello, everybody. My name's Caleb, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about how to make a backend application using .NET. We're going to use Aspire in order to orchestrate all of the services we need to run on the backend, and we're going to use Entity Framework Core as the ORM. So let's get into it. As an introduction, Aspire is a .NET tool. It was introduced, I think, a couple of years ago, and it's been a very popular tool in the .NET ecosystem that allows you to define the things that you're going to use to develop an application. So we're primarily going to use it as like a development dependency. We're going to be using a Postgres database, and we're going to use Entity Framework Core to talk to that Postgres database. But the great thing about .NET Aspire is that you can use it to start the Postgres database for you. So here's an example, like right on the main page of their documentation, it's got an example of running a Postgres database. So we use Aspire in order to start up our database when our application starts up. And then in order to create all of the tables, talk back and forth to the database, we're going to use Entity Framework Core. Again, Entity Framework, a very historical component of .NET, and Entity Framework Core was released when .NET became open source. So it's an evolution of Entity Framework from before .NET was open source. Been around for many years, and it's got tons of cycles on it. It's a fantastic ORM. I really like using it, and we're going to go into all of the intricacies of how to set it up in this video. We'll have follow-up videos about how to use Entity Framework Core in detail. Today's video is focused on scaffolding our application. So really the first thing you would do when you're creating a new backend application. In order to help scaffold, I am going to use Claude Code. So you can see here, I've got Claude. I run with dangerously skip permissions. That basically means I don't want prompts every time Claude decides to do something. As opposed to getting prompts and manually approving every time Claude wants to do something, what I like to do is keep up a lightweight editor. So I keep up Visual Studio Code, and I will just watch for file changes as well as watching what the terminal will do, what Claude says it will do in the terminal. So the first thing I'm going to do is tell it to scaffold me an Aspire application. So I'll say scaffold a new Aspire.NET Aspire application. And we're going to call this EF car. We'll make our application about cars, like cars, makes, models, maybe like a car shop type of thing, or a luxury car dealer that wants to track inventory. Again, just to give us kind of a theme to go with our application. So we'll say call it EF car. What this is going to do is it's going to run a .NET template. There's like a .NET new Aspire template. You can see it's running this .NET new Aspire starter. There were a few dependencies that I needed in order to install this, namely, like I needed to have the .NET SDK installed. I have the latest .NET SDK installed, and it also needed to have a Aspire workload installed. Oh dear, it's created a entire Blazor application. That's all right. I just will tell it, I've prepared a script here or a prompt here to tell it kind of exactly what I would want. I can say, I'll show you what that text is. Basically, scaffold out a .NET solution. So I've got a solution in my mind that's got 4 projects within it. So Aspire by default, and we can see here, Aspire has created app host and service defaults. So these are like 2 projects that come with every Aspire template by default. So the app host is where it's actually going to define like what applications to start up. You can see this one's starting up like API service, it's starting up a front end. And then the service defaults it's a shared configuration. I mean, basically what Microsoft has done with this is they've split out a new project that's called the service defaults project. And that the intention for that is if you have like multiple different services, so maybe if you're running like a microservices architecture, that service defaults could be shared amongst your microservices. So it's common things like tracing and health checks and things of that nature. You can kind of see in here in this extensions that it's got like service discovery, telemetry, etc. So those are going to be the default ones. See, I do like that they called it API service instead of just API. So how about API service? Edit my prompt to call that API service. And basically, we're just ditching the web front end for now, since we just want to deal with scaffolding out the back end. And the other thing you'll see that I've done in this prompt is I've asked it to make a class library for efcar.data. Again, this is a little forward thinking. If I want to make maybe a different service, like not just an API service, maybe a different sort of service that still accesses my data layer, I want this distinction. So I don't want to put all of my data models into the API service. And maybe if I create another service down the road, I'll have to, that would cause me to have to import my API service everywhere. I want to differentiate early on between my data and my API services. So I'm going to put those into like different .NET projects. So let's go ahead, give this a run and see if it can rearrange our projects for us. One thing you'll notice is that I like to use a source directory under my solution. So source directory is good here because after we create all of this code that runs, eventually down the road, we're going to want like a tests directory here as well that then add some test projects. So we could add unit testing projects, integration testing projects here. So we'll let this run and then pop right back when this completes and talk about what it did. All right, and we're back. Let me go ahead and go over what was done here. First of all, I restructured the repository a bit. So I created a directory for my repository called EFCAR, and within that directory, I made a .NET directory. So I like to do this because if we turn this into a full stack application, we may introduce other languages here. So we may have, for example, like a React front end, which would not suit itself well for the .NET directory. We may introduce additional CI/CD scripts, etc. So I like to go ahead and just create a .NET directory that's going to hold all of my .NET related things. So we've created that directory, and then within there I moved the solution file. We've got a README in here, and going through real quick all of the projects that are put in here. We've got our API service. Actually, what I'm going to do is switch out of VS Code at this point, and I am going to bring up Rider. So Rider is a .NET focused IDE that has a lot of .NET niceties in it. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And let's look at it in the solution view in Rider. So I've got 4 projects under my source directory. Looking at the API service, very basic. Pretty much all this is doing is configuring our database context. So one thing I did have to direct it to do is use a database context pool. That's actually an efficiency. You could do kind of by default add DB context, but a more efficient pooling database context mechanism is called add DB context pool. So that's kind of the default that I always use. Now we see this like this magic string here called get connection string. EFCAR local, that actually comes from Aspire. And we'll go over that in just a minute, but we're running the migration here. So basically we set up all of our services, and before we start our web host, we run migrations. Microsoft actually made this call to run migrations more or less it's more or less safe to run across multiple, say we're running 2 replicas of this web server, 2 things try to run migrations at the same time. I believe as of EF Core 9, somewhere in there, like very recently, they have added that it will do locking around running migrations so that 2 things won't try to run migrations at the same time. So it is actually safe to run migrations in this manner at this point. although some people will still choose to run migrations kind of separately as part of their deployment process. It is technically safe to put it in right here in your program.cs. And I find that that's just easier to do when getting started in development, so that every time you start your application, you make sure you're on your latest version of the database by running migrations. So looking to the app host, made just a couple changes in here. One thing I did change is adding just a default password. I think by default Aspire like generates a random password, but since we're just using this for local development anyways, I've just went ahead and used like Postgres with user Postgres password Postgres. So added a default password there for local testing. And then another thing that I added, of course, we've got a reference here, but I've also got to wait for PostgreSDB. Since we do run those migrations, and obviously our application, once we create it, is not going to work without the database. You want to wait for the database here. So that is the app host. And then an overview of the data project. Now, we're not really getting into like how to build models in this video, or like recommended ways and conventions of building models or database context. So this is kind of all just defaults of what Claude Code made for us here, but it made a couple models for us. The real key here is that in our README file, so if I go back and check out a README file, there's a command here. Let's see, I added basically a configuration for the .NET tool, the .NET EF tool. So that's a .config file /.net-tools.json that says install this .NET EF tool. So you do have to run, basically put that tool version in here, and that tool version, we match that exactly to the version of EF Core that we're using. So EF Core, well, design is used there, but in our data, I think we'll see got like 909 of Entity Framework Core, and then the Postgres drivers. So that 9.0.9, it's consistent across Entity Framework Core here, the design package here, and we keep it consistent across our .NET tools here. So some people do a .NET tool install and like globally install .NET EF. That works too, but once you start to get like multiple projects, and maybe some of them are on different versions of .NET or on different versions of EF Core, installing that tool manifest locally is a way to ensure that you have an aligned version of the .NET EF tool to whatever version of Entity Framework Core that you're using. So with that installed, you're able to run this initial migration creation script, and you can apply migrations again when our app starts up. It automatically applies those migrations. So let's go ahead and give this a look. Again, another nice thing that Writer does have is this Aspire plugin. So if I just start my Aspire app host, it's actually going to give me a dashboard down here of what's going on. So it tells me I've got an Aspire dashboard here, so I can show you what that looks like. An Aspire dashboard that's going to start up. It's going to give me nice like ability to like look at console logs for all of my different Aspire services. But in addition to that, I've also got the one that's built into Writer here, so I can look at logs or database container logs here, and that's a nice addition to Writer, or a nice feature of Writer, a good reason to use Writer. And I can go ahead and also pull over here DataGrip. So I went ahead and made a DataGrip connection. This is another JetBrains tool to introspect a database. You could use any database explorer here. You could use pgadmin or any other Postgres. You could use an open source tool if you don't have JetBrains. I think there's even plugins for VS Code that will let you look at databases. But since I have the JetBrains suite, I like to use DataGrip for this. And you can see I've connected the database. This is, again, one of those reasons that it's nice to have like that just pre-baked Postgres password, so that you can plug in Postgres in your connection string. Just looking at the connection properties, it's like localhost, port 5432. You can see in our Aspire settings, those actually match. The port number, I did add an explicit 5432 here. And then it's just got these empty tables that migrated vehicle banks, vehicle models. So that's a general overview. We do, one kind of last thing here we can do as a sanity check is that we do have our, uh, localhost 5000 listening right now. It's just returning kind of a static EF card API service. Um, but I hope that's a good overview of how to scaffold an application, kind of how to organize your .NET projects so that we have an extensible solution here where we can now go add our data layer. We can add models, create new migrations. We can begin to create an API service where we have an API server. We could create like a REST API here. We could create a gRPC API or GraphQL or whatever type of API that you want to create on the back end. And we will go ahead and do that in a future video. And we also have our Aspire app host, which very quickly helps any developer just press the play button, database is spun up, database is migrated, and they're ready to start developing. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you please like and subscribe. Go ahead and follow the channel because we'll be posting more videos about how to take the starter application. We're going to talk about how to build detailed building of Entity Framework Core models, how we follow conventions in Entity Framework Core to stay organized, how to build different types of API servers so that we can access this data, how to build testing, unit tests, integration tests, and then how we would connect all of that to a front end. So we're going to talk about kind of the full suite of full stack development. So I hope you stay posted for those and let me know what you think in the comments.